This is the RG35xx, and it has a custom operating system called garlicos that is pretty freaking awesome. And this is the MiYoo Mini, and it also has a custom operating system called onionos that is equally pretty freaking awesome. And you might have heard that you can download and install custom skins for both garlic and onionos. I made one, a skin, and I'll show you how to install it. But I wanted to show you how you can make your own skin, your own freaking skin, just for you. You think I'm lying? Well, I'm not, and it hurts my feelings that you would say such a thing. But that's okay. You can apologize in the comments below after you watch this video and see how wrong you are. Hello there, I'm TechDweeb, welcome, thanks for clicking on the video. I'm a big fan of the MiYoo Mini. I've said so in many videos I made about it, including my videos about how to install the custom operating system onionos. And the RG35xx I'm also a big fan of. Again, just check out my videos if you want to know more, or how to install the custom operating system for that device called garlicos. Garlic and onions, that has a nice ring to it actually. It's almost like they planned it that way. Anyways, today we're here to talk about skins. Skin is pretty good. It keeps your blood and muscles and bones all tucked away neatly inside your body. It also protects the body from external factors such as bacteria, chemicals, and temperature. Unless you can find a way to get under someone's skin. And I'm not talking about getting on their nerves, which I tend to do without even trying. Of course, I'm talking about being shrunken down to the size of a blood cell in a spaceship and flying around inside their body, under their skin. Also, it's good that we have skin because without skin, we'd be pretty weird looking. And also, skin is soft and sensitive. It feels good when you touch it, except for the person being touched, depending on which part of the skin that you touch and how you touch it. And let's not forget that skin is important for us because it's what separates us from our arthropod cousins. It makes us squishy, but it also makes us not look like freaking crabs. Otherwise, we'd be just a big society of crab people. So what does this ridiculous rant about skin and cartoon clips have to do with retro emulation on the RG35xx or the MiYoo Mini? Well, I don't know, to be honest. Apart from the fact that we're talking about making skins for those things, so I thought maybe something about skin would be a fun way to start the video. But looking back, it seems like it was probably just a big waste of your time, and I'm still wasting your time, right now, actually. I could be getting to the freaking point, but instead I'm still talking, and you're still listening for some reason. So the blame lies on both of us, to be fair. Anyways, I made a skin. Yeah, I did it. It's my own official TechDweeb skin for garlicos on the RG35xx and for onionos on the MiYoo Mini. This should also work on the MiYoo Mini Plus, by the way. The skin is pretty great, if I do say so myself. It looks all retro-ish and pixely. I'll include a link to download this in the description below for both the RG35xx, which from now on we're just going to call the XX because that name is stupid, and the MiYoo Mini. And I'll show you how to install them at the end of the video. And the custom boot logo too. I did one of those, and I'll show you how to install that. But first, I wanted to show you how I made them and how you can use this same technique to make your own skin. That's right, you can literally make your own skin for the XX or the Mini, or both. And it's not even hard. It's easy. So easy that even you can figure it out, if you can believe that. So let's dive in and get started right now. Real quick, before we get started, I wanted to explain that garlicos and onionos use basically the same skins. Most of the files are the same across both devices, the same size and shape and the same file names, so if you make a skin for one, you can easily adapt it for the other one. There are a few image files that you'll need on the MiYoo Mini that aren't used in skins on the XX and vice versa, but they're like 90% compatible. It's not too much extra work to adapt the skins for one device or the other. I'm going to start by showing you how to make a garlicos skin for the XX, and then we'll adapt it to onion for the MiYoo Mini afterwards. Let's start with step 1, obtaining a skin. That's right, we're gonna need a skid. I'll include a link to an archive of garlicos skids and a separate one for onionos skids, and you'll need to get a skid to use as a base. Of course, you can use the default one that comes on the device, on the image, garlicos image, but I think it might make more sense to start with something that sort of already looks like what you want to make. So download your skid and unzip it or whatever so that you can see all the files inside the skid folder. For garlicos, I'm going to download this synthwave skid by the user Ritual to use as the base for this tutorial. On to step 2, we're going to edit the files in the skid and make them look different, change the way they look. So if we look inside the skids folder and view the files, we can see that there's a bunch of images, picture files. That's right, a skid is just a bunch of picture files. And all we need to do to make our own skid is edit the picture files. You can use any image editing program for this. I'm going to show you the process using Adobe Photoshop, but you can use free programs like Krita or Paint.net or GIMP. Any of those will work. So let's start with the background image. We'll open up background.png in our image editor. There we go. Now let's change the background. And at this point, you should really just think about what you want your skid to look like. Maybe you want your skid to look like your favorite retro game, Darkwing Duck, or your favorite TV show, Darkwing Duck. But for this example, I'm going to make a skid based on my favorite person in the world, my cat Hermione. Let's get a picture of her right now, actually. Hold still, Hermione. I'm going to take a picture of you because for the skid that I'm making. Hold still. Meow. Oh, hey, that actually looks pretty good. That wasn't so hard, was it? Meow. So I got my picture. There she is, my beautiful soulmate. And I'm going to place this picture right into this document, the default skid. I'm going to place it right over top of the old background. And we'll resize it, maybe change the colors, apply some, I don't know, filters or whatever. Cut out the cat, multiply the cat, you know, make it all cool and backgroundy. It's probably a good idea to think about the buttons that'll go on top of the background as well. A general rule of thumb for design is if you have dark buttons on top, you want a light background underneath. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to have light buttons on top of a dark background. Hermione's favorite color is purple, so we're going to go with like a dark purple vibe. There we go. I have my background all ready. Now I'm going to flatten this image so that I don't have any layers. That's something you need to do with Photoshop if you're going to save this as a PNG file. And then we could save our image, and there we go. It's saved. We edited the background. Easy enough. The next step is basically the same as the first step, but we need to go through and edit all of the UI elements of the skid, or whichever you want to change. You don't need to do everything if you just want a background and menus and stuff. So I'm going to edit the files of the main buttons. There are 2 versions of each button. There's a normal version and a selected version for when it's selected. Let's start with the normal version of favorite. Now, when we open this, you can see that it has a transparent background. It's kind of hard to see what you're doing, kind of hard to work on it like that. So what I'm going to do is drop my background artwork into this file, just so I can get an idea of how it's going to look on my background. It'll be cropped off, that's okay. We're just putting it there to get a general idea. And we'll move this to the bottom underneath the button, and there we go. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind. garlicos puts its own text for each of these menu options. The text will go approximately at the top of the bottom third of the image, approximately here. I'm not going to give you exact dimensions because I'm lazy, but there will be a bit of a trial and error period of getting the placement just right. It's all part of the fun. Just keep in mind where approximately the text will be, and don't let your button get in the way of that. So let's make a button for favorites. Hermione's favorite toy is her catnip mouse, so that's what I'm going to do for this button. A mouse. I'm going to draw a mouse using my mouse, actually. And since my background is dark, I'm going to make the button itself light. I think a light pink sort of color will look good on top of my dark purple background. There we go, just like that. Now, you can do what we did before. Get rid of the background layer and flatten the layers and then save the file. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all my buttons in this same document so that I don't have to do the whole background thing on each one. So let's do our next icon on a separate layer for the games button. Sticking with our cat theme, we'll do, I don't know, a fish. Cats like fish, I think. And the next button will be recent. We'll do a a ball of yarn for that one. And another button is settings. We'll do a cat paw for that. And then there's a button for RetroArch. And we'll do a bird for that one. Because Hermione murders birds all the time for fun. Because she's a monster. And also, we need to do a highlighted version of each of these. So I'm going to be lazy and just make the highlighted version a pure white version of the original. So the normal buttons are kind of a pale pink, and the highlighted versions will be white. And they'll look like they're glowing when they're selected with white. Maybe I'll actually give them an outer glow effect as well. In Photoshop, you can do that by double-clicking on the layer icons. There we go. I have a separate layer for each of my files. Now, instead of just saving this file, I'm going to go through and toggle each layer individually and then save a PNG file of just that layer with the transparent background. In Photoshop, I use the Save for Web option. But if you're using Krita or GIMP, some other image editor, then the process might be a little different. What's important is that you save a PNG of just that layer or save over top of the old file. Make sure the background is transparent. So I'm just replacing the old files with the new files, and they'll just have the same file name. So I'm going to call this done. That's all I want to do for this Hermione skin. I started with Synthwave, which is not far off visually from the skin that I wanted to make, but if you wanted to do every single UI element, you can totally do that. That's what I did for my TechDweeb skin, and it looks freaking awesome when you take the time to do it. There are files for the battery indicator, files for the buttons at the bottom of the screen, and in here, in the system folder, there are icons for each freaking system that's supported when you're browsing through the games menu. That took freaking forever to make all those icons. You don't need to do all those icons. Most of the skin makers don't bother with those. There's quite a few, and it's pretty tedious to do them all, but when you do, oh man, it really adds to the whole experience. I'm glad I did the icons for these in my TechDweeb skin. It really completes the package. Also, there are a few other ways that you could customize the skin. First, you could change the font. It's a little bit complicated, but here's the quick version. Any font in TTF or OTF format should work. What you need to do is put the font file in a font folder, and then you'll need to copy the english.lang file from the SD card and put it into a lang folder, and then edit english.lang and make sure that the file name of your font is in the font area of this file. It's pretty simple. Just download my skin and use that as a rough guide if you need to look at these files yourself and the format of the directories and stuff. And there's a file in the skin folder called settings.json. If you open up this file in a text editor, you'll see that there's a few values in here for the different font colors and stuff. So let's edit these. What we need is the hex value for the colors that we want the text to be. What I'll do is in Photoshop, I'm going to go to my pink icon color, and in the color settings for that color, I can see the hex value right here at the bottom of the pop-up window. So I'll just copy that and paste it into the settings.json file as the value for color inactive. Make sure that you use this same format. It should be in quotes with a pound sign at the start. Same thing with the color active. We'll do white, which is FFFFFF. And we're going to put that into the settings. But as you can see, that's already there. Because this skin isn't far off from the variation that we're making. So probably most of these colors will be fine if you leave them as they are. That's the benefit of starting with a skin that already sort of looks how you want yours to look. After you have all the image files ready with your own custom artwork, then you're ready to copy it to your device. On the XX, you'll have to take the SD card and put it into your computer. Oh, by the way, I've had some questions about what SD card reader I recommend. This is the one I like. It's the Anchor SD card reader. It's the same one that Russ over at Retro Game Corps recommends. It's just a reliable product from a good brand. I'll include a link to this in the description below if you'd like to pick one up, and I'll also include a link to the micro SD cards that I recommend, just so that you'll minimize the risk of corrupted data. I've had it happen a few times and it really sucks. Just get yourself a good card reader and use decent micro SD cards. None of this stuff is expensive. Anyways, shove that SD card in the SD card reader and then shove that into your computer. You should see the SD card showing up in this PC, and then you'll need to open the drive that contains your ROMs. It has these folders. In here, we want to go into the CFW folder. And in here is a folder called skid and also lag and also font. So if we open up the skid folder, we can see that it contains all the files for the original skid that came with garlicos. So what I'm going to do is change this folder name so that we don't lose the original skid. We're just going to rename this folder skid.backup. And I'm also going to backup english.lag so that I can go back to the default of that. So we're going to call it english.backup.lag. And now we just need to copy over our 3 folders that we've been working on. We have our font folder, our lag folder, and our skid folder. We're going to copy that over, and then you're done. You're ready to test it out. So eject your SD card, shove that back in the XX, and hey, look at that. Not bad. We can see our custom skid looking very nice indeed. Our custom buttons work. Our highlighted buttons that work. Our colors for the text, not too shabby. And that's it. We're done. We made a skid for garlicos on the XX. Good job, buddy. You did it.
Yay!
Now, let's talk about making skids for the MiYoo Mini for onionos. The process for making a skid on onionos is the same as garlicos. You can do the exact same steps. Download a skid, edit the skid, and there's a different process for applying the skid, which I'll show you in a minute, but for all intents and purposes, the process is the same. You're just editing the images of a skid that you downloaded. But here's the thing, the skins for garlicos and onionos are more or less interchangeable. Most of the files have the same names. You can literally use the files that you edited for garlicos. So if you did the work of making a skid for garlicos, like I did, you can use most of the work when you adapt it for onionos. But there are a few things to keep in mind, and I'll go through all of the ones that I've discovered that I can think of right now. Your background will need to be rotated 180 degrees. onionos uses the background upside down for whatever reason. Your main menu buttons will need an extra button. It's called app, and that'll need another custom button for you to make. onionos has 2 bars, one along the top and one along the bottom. The files are called bgtitle.png and tipsbar.bg.png. You can edit these and make them look however you want. On onionos, the skins don't have the ability to change the system icons. You'll have to copy over the icon files to a different directory on the SD card. It's the icons directory on the root level of your MiYoo Mini SD card. onionos skins can be applied using the theme browser. To do this, you'll need to give your skid a custom name, which can be done by editing the config.json file and making sure that name and author are filled out with your own info. You can also edit colors and stuff in here. There's a lot of settings in here. I'm not going to go through them all in this guide. You can tinker around in here if you want to do some more customization. You can also change the thumbnail for the skid. And here's a tip. You can take a screenshot on your MiYoo Mini by pressing menu and power at the same time. You'll need to resize this to 480 by 360 though, if you want it to be viewed properly in the theme browser. When your skid is done, you'll need to add the skid folder to the skins folder of your MiYoo Mini, which is in the themes directory. And then you can apply the skid using the theme browser in onionos. If you set it up right, you should see your skid showing up in the theme browser with your thumbnail and the proper name. When you select it, it'll apply your skid, and if you've set it up right, you should be good to go. Making an onionos skid is more involved than making a garlicos skid, I've found, with the extra files and the system icons, just a few extra steps, but it's not crazy complex or anything. The process is the same, just download the skid, edit the files, pretty straightforward. Now, let's talk about another cool, fun customization thing that you might want to do. That's changing the boot logo. We'll start with garlicos. It's actually pretty simple. All you need to do is, again, edit a file. The file is on one of the partitions for the SD card for your XX. And this time, we're not going to open up the partition with our games. We're going to open up the partition with our system data. In here, you'll see a modules folder. That's how you know you're in the right partition. We need to find a file called boot_logo.bmp.gz. It's on the root level of the SD card. Copy that file over to your computer. .gz is a compression format, so you'll need a program to decompress it. 7-zip works. It's a free program. I'll link to that in the description below if you don't have it. So we're going to uncompress the .gz file, and then in there's a BMP file, and then we're going to open up the BMP file and edit it. So we'll just open it up in Photoshop, and then we can put whatever we want in here. I'm going to make one using the same background from our skin, and then just put some text on top. Now, just like before, I'll flatten this in Photoshop and save the file. Then, you'll need to turn it back into a GZ file using 7-zip. So, right-click on the file, go to the 7-zip menu, and select Add to Archive. And then in here, just make sure the archive format is gzip. When you're done, just make sure that the file has the same name as before, boot_logo.bmp.gz. And then you could copy that over to the system partition on your SD card. Feel free to back up the original before you do that, and then boom, that's it. You got yourself a custom boot logo that matches your theme. Wasn't that easy? On to the MiYoo Mini. I'm not going to show you how to do the boot logo for the MiYoo Mini. You can change the boot logo on the MiYoo Mini, but it's a more involved process because you need to download the app, prepare your image in a specific way, and actually flash the image to the ROM of the device. And I could make a whole video just on that process, but luckily I don't need to, because a great YouTuber and friend of the channel, Russ from Retro Game Corps, made a guide of how to do that. I'll link to his video in the description below if you'd like to flash your own boot logo on the MiYoo Mini. But here's the thing, when you use onionos, there are actually two boot logos. There's one that shows immediately when you turn on the device, that's the more complicated one, and then there's another one that shows while the UI is loaded. It's like a loading screen, but you can edit this second screen, this second boot logo easily. It's just an image file in the skin folder. It's called bootscreen.png in the extra folder of your skin directory. So just open that up, make whatever art that you want, save it, and that's it. It'll now show as that second boot screen. And it's kind of annoying that we can't easily change the main boot logo, which is why I didn't personally bother making one of my own yet. I just used one of the options that came with the boot logo changing program. I don't really care, but if you really want to make your own, then go watch Retro Game Corps' video because it's a good one. And tell them TechDweeb sent ya. And that's it. That's my guide. How to make your own garlicos skins, how to make your own MiYoo Mini skins, how to adapt your skins so they'll work on both devices, how to make your own boot logos. I've given you everything. Everything I have to give. You've sucked me dry. Seriously, it's super easy, super fun, making your own skin, and it's just so satisfying. Like I said, I made this skin, the TechDweeb skin, in my trademark orange color scheme, and I freaking love it. Having this on my screen makes both of these devices feel so fun to me. Again, if you'd like to download and use my garlicos or onionos skin, you can download them in the links below. They're hosted on my Patreon page, but they're public posts, so you don't need to pay me for them or anything. But hey, I mean, while you're there, if you did want to subscribe to my Patreon to help me buy food for my cat or just support the things that I do, I'd certainly be grateful for that. And if there's anything else that you'd like me to show you how to do on the XX or the MiYoo Mini, some ideas for a video, if I haven't already made a video about every freaking thing you could do, just let me know in the comments below. I love hearing your suggestions for videos and stuff down there. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you like the video, or don't if you didn't. That's it for me. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.